So thank you for everyone who is joining us. We're going to give everyone else a few more minutes to join. While we wait, I'll just share the agenda so you can have a sense of what we will be discussing this evening. We have a full agenda for you. Hopefully we can answer all your questions regarding the college process. We have a wonderful panel of speakers from a number of our area colleges that are joining us this evening. So you'll get to know them. You'll get to know some things about their school that they offer. And hopefully you'll walk away with a lot of really good information. And as we wait for everyone to join, I'll say this a couple times, but if you have any questions, we're going to hold off on questions until the end, but you can put them in the chat. Mrs. Nardelli, our guidance secretary, will be monitoring the chat for those questions. And at the end of the presentation, we will address anything that has not been reviewed during the course of our event this evening. Again, I'll just give a couple more minutes. As we wait for all the attendees to join us. Okay. So I want to welcome everybody to Archbishop Carroll's annual College Information Night. We have a wonderful evening prepared for you. My name is Marguerite DiMattia. I'm the Director of Guidance at Carroll. And before we get to the nuts and bolts of the evening, you know, we want to open with a prayer as we start everything at Carroll with a prayer. So we'd like to use the prayer of St. Joseph. It is the year of St. Joseph, and this Friday is the feast day of St. Joseph. So I thought it appropriate for us to do this. So let's just bring your intentions to this prayer. That is what this prayer is all about. So, O St. Joseph, whose protection is so great, so prompt, so strong, before the throne of God, I place in you all my interest and desires. O St. Joseph, do assist me by your powerful intercession and obtain for me from your divine Son all spiritual blessings through Jesus Christ our Lord, so that having engaged here below your heavenly power, I may offer my thanksgiving and homage to the most loving of fathers. O St. Joseph, I never weary contemplating you and Jesus asleep in your arms. I dare not approach while he reposes near your heart. Press him in my name and kiss his fine head for me, and ask him to return the kiss when I draw my dying breath. St. Joseph, patron of departing souls, pray for us. Amen. Again, we have a really full evening. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Mrs. Nardelli will monitor that, and we'll get to them all at the end. But we're going to begin this evening with types of admissions and applications, and our representative from St. Joseph, Feng Li, is going to take over for us.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my how-to there. Okay. There we go. There we go. Awesome. But so just to start off, just good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. I'm really thankful to be part of, this electric group of representatives from wonderful schools, universities, colleges. But to quickly introduce myself, my name is Fung Lee, and I am your admission counselor at St. Joseph's University. I'm just going to kick it off with some details about the application process, but I will say for me and for you guys that everyone's experience will be different. Your college experience, your college application experience, it will be different, but that's perfectly fine as long as you have the know-how that you're going to get from tonight to get you started. But there are three main applications. We have the Common App, which is literally the most common application. Hundreds of schools, colleges, universities accept it, and it's probably the one that you're familiar with. There's also the direct application. This is usually right on the homepage of the university or college you're applying to, so it's very easy to find. I will say though, if you're using the Common App and sending it to multiple schools, you do not want to mention a specific university. If you're applying to, say, Temple, and you don't want to have in your essay how you're the perfect candidate for Newman or Drexel or anything like that. So be wary of the differences between the Common App and the direct app. But in a direct application, you're safe to mention the university you're applying to in your essay or other parts of your application. What's really unique is the coalition application. It's pretty rare when students use the coalition app to apply, but a great perk is that it's essentially a virtual locker. You're allowed to put in different achievements and milestones throughout your high school career in there that can really keep you organized as you start the application process. So which one do you choose? And you're going to hate this, but you're going to have to get comfortable hearing this. It depends. Remember how I said everyone was different? It really depends. So one great rule of thumb for me that I used was just use whichever one you feel more comfortable with, whether it's the direct application or the coalition application or the Common App. Just use whichever one you feel more comfortable in using, and whichever one is the easiest to access for you. So now that your application is done, what about the deadlines? I will say that rolling admission seems to be the easy one. Your application is read and reviewed once the university or your college receives it. So I would actually suggest submitting these ones first. You can see which schools and colleges you've been accepted to, which can alleviate some of that stress as well and keep you a little bit more organized, and you'll have much more flexibility. Now, some schools like St. Joe's, we have deadlines. So this is the simplest way I found to explain this. For early action is for our early birds who are saying, let me know now, please. We also have early decision, and some universities will have multiple early decision dates. Those are for our early birds who are 100% committed to a university or college, no matter what. I would suggest, if you're thinking about the early decision application deadline, I would suggest talking to your family, your admission counselor, your school counselors, and there is a binding agreement component to it. So, you want to talk to them about what that means and how that relates to you. And lastly, we have the regular decision applicants. Literally, it's let me know by April 1st. And that's literally the regular deadline. As far as which one you should go for, again, it depends. But I highly recommend, if you have the option for rolling admission for a university you're interested in, to get those applications in first. So now you've applied, now you're waiting. You'll have access to an application portal, which is kind of your home base. Once you submit that application or even start that application, you'll kind of have a personalized page through the university or college that you're applying for. You can use this space to update any information, monitor your application, say that you need a letter recommendation or something, and you're not sure you might not be sure what's missing in your application. You can see it in there. And also what's great is this is also a space where you can see maybe a decision has been made on your application, or potentially financial aid letters and updates and things like that as well. With the application portal, a couple things to note. So you'll be getting a temporary password first to set up the application portal. You want this email to be an email that you use often. A lot of students do use their high school email to apply, make sure it's one that you can look at throughout the year. On top of that, you want it to be professional email too, something as simple as your first name, your last name, and a set of numbers. We've all gotten emails from like QD126 or something like that, and you want to have a professional email, especially when you're talking to your school counselors or just representatives from a university. But the application portal will be your first steps after applying, and that will kind of start off your college career essentially. But again, thank you so much for your time. This is the best way to contact me is through email. And if you have any questions about, say, our food marketing program, our 11-to-1 student to teacher ratio, we're open for campus tours right now. We're about 25 minutes or so from Archbishop Carroll. So yeah, absolutely sign up for a campus tour and come see Hawk Hill.
Awesome.
right.
Excellent job. Excellent job, Fung. Love hearing from you every opportunity we get. My name is Jeremy Branch, everyone. I'm the Senior Assistant Director of Admission at Penn State University, longtime member of our Schreier Honors College Review Committee as well. And outside of Penn State, I'm the president of the Pennsylvania Association for College Admission Counseling, which all of our folks here on the webinar are part of as well. And I have the opportunity and the privilege to talk to you a little bit about admissions criteria. And I love having this conversation because there's so much noise around the college admissions process. Have you noticed that? I'm sure you have. Your neighbor always has opinions and tips and tricks for how you could get admitted to your school of choice, right? Obviously, your school counselors have opinions, and that's actually one of the ones you should be listening to, so on and so forth. But what really goes in to college admissions decisions? What do people like us here on the panel, what do we look for? What do we hone in on? What do we focus in on? Well, we're going to talk about this from a variety of different standpoints moving forward, but I have the privilege of talking to you a little bit about some of the core pieces. When I sit down with your application, the first thing I look at, other than your name, is how you performed in your high school. The curriculum that you took at Carroll, the level of classes that you took, how you took advantage of the opportunities that are available at your high school. That is where I hone in on first and foremost. Now, your secondary school report is part of that, right? It gives me, if I have no idea about your high school, gives me a pretty good indication of what is offered there, how many students or what percentage of students go on to four-year colleges and universities, math sequencing, so on and so forth. So that provides me with a nice context of your building if I hadn't been there before. But fortunately, you have several people on our Penn State admissions team that are very familiar with your high school, so you don't have to worry about that. But from there, it's time to look into your transcripts, or something we call also your secondary, your self-reported academic record. Sorry about that, right? Now, what is the difference between a transcript and a second self-reported academic record? Well, schools like Penn State, Pitt, Temple, and a few others, Rutgers is another one that comes to mind. We've been using this thing called a self-reported academic record for some time. What is that? Well, basically, it's a digital version of your transcript. Instead of having your school counselor send it to us electronically or mail it to us, you yourself, the student, are responsible for filling out your self-reported academic record for the schools that require it, right? So you have to sit down with your transcript, input each and every one of your courses, the level that you took that course in the grade that you earned in that course, right? Outside of us, those of us who require the self-reported academic record, or SHRAR, as we affectionately call it, most schools are still requiring that you send a transcript. Now, one of the questions that I get from students all the time is, okay, Jeremy, you're going to require an application from me. You're going to require my transcript or self-reported academic record, scores, activity sections, so on and so forth. Do I have to send this all in at the same time? Or am I able to send it in bits and pieces? Well, you are able to send it in piece by piece. But as one of my friends is going to talk about a little bit later, you still have to keep in mind deadlines, right? And I'm not going to spoil that for you. That's a really important component. But you are able to send things in as you have them or as they are ready. Each and every one of the counselors on this webinar right now spends a lot of time digging into those things, right? But there are other pieces that we like to take a look at. Your GPA overall, Class rank, if it's reported, is often used by our colleges and universities, along with standardized testing scores. Now, there's a lot of talk and a lot of questions nowadays around standardized testing. It's been in the news. It's in some type of paper or journal that you're reading every single week, right? What is the deal with standardized testing scores these days? Well, a number of our institutions have gone to a test optional form of college admission. There have been schools that have been doing this for what feels like the dawn of time, right? And there are some of us like Penn State that are a little bit newer to it. But one of the reasons we had to do it was basically because of where we were with COVID-19, right? It wasn't easy to sit down for testing. It wasn't easy to find these opportunities. Some schools were able to hold testing locally. Other schools didn't have that opportunity. So because of that chasm in equity and access, we said, you know what? It's something that if you have it, we'll take it. But if you don't have it or you don't like your score, you don't have to feel like you have to submit it. Now, a question that I've received quite a bit from students, especially rising seniors, is they say, okay, Jeremy, now that you've seen a decent amount of students apply test optional, what do you recommend that I do? Well, my university doesn't let me answer that question for you. And you may wonder why. Are you being secretive? No, that's not the case. Basically, we don't want you to blame us later if for some reason you're not admitted. We don't want you saying, well, Jeremy is the one who told me to submit those scores. But one of the rules of thumbs that I've been providing to families, I say, look at the averages on our website. As you visit the Penn State website, the Temple website, the Widener website, look at what those averages are based off of our previously enrolled classes. If your scores are falling in those ranges, you're probably in a good position to submit them if you choose. If they're falling below those ranges, that's probably the sign that you shouldn't, right? Because if a school is test optional and you aren't even measuring up from a testing standpoint to what their averages are, the known students on their campus already, it's probably a sign that that's not going to do anything favorable for you if you submit that. But that's still something I want you to talk about with your Carroll team in the school counseling office to figure out what's the best route for you. But this is something that I'm quite excited to see happen across the admissions landscape. To give you an idea of how many students have taken advantage of this with my own university, 56% of the students who applied to Penn State this year did so without test scores. 56%. So you know what that told me? As somebody who spends a lot of time with higher ed advocacy, it taught me, number one, that there was a great need for this. So I'm glad that my university responded to it and many others did as well. But it also showed me how many students may have self-selected themselves out of our process in years prior because maybe they weren't a great test taker. And they said, you know what? I'm not even going to bother with Penn State because they require it. But now that student had an ability to be admitted to our school this year. And I have seen students who were truly, truly benefited by having test optional as a route. I also saw students who submitted test scores, and that was the right thing for them to do. It was another piece of the puzzle that we were able to evaluate. One of the things that I don't want you to think, though, when it comes to test optional is that it's going to equate to automatic admission. Because there were some students who were applying in the fall and they were saying, hey, wait a minute, you're test optional. So that means it's going to be easier for me to be admitted to my schools of choice. That's not necessarily true. Because when we don't have a piece of your application, we have to scrutinize what we do have in a deeper way. So then your essays get reviewed further. Your letters of recommendation, which one of my friends will talk about in a few moments, will be read more. Your curriculum is going to be scrutinized more. So it's not a get out of jail free card. It's just another option for your application. A number of colleges and universities have already said where they're going to sit with this over the next few years. We at Penn State, through 2023, we will remain test optional. Some other schools are saying, hey, they're running a 3-year pilot. Some other schools are saying, well, at least through 2022. So you'll have to check in with each and every college that's on your list as to how they're going to handle it. But many of us are going to be test optional through the year that you're applying to college, which is really helpful. But as I mentioned, your secondary school report, your self-reported academic record or transcript, those aren't the only portions of the college review process. I'm now going to hand the program over to my friend Lauren Haley from Widener University, as she'll talk to you about other student credentials. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Well, first, I just wanted to take a moment. I'm going to share my screen, but I wanted to take a moment to thank everyone for attending tonight. So I feel like this is definitely a great first step as you're kind of going through the admissions process and that sort of thing, to know, what's coming up next, what should I be thinking about, and all that good stuff. So just want to commend you for doing that. You're all on the right track. I know sometimes it's hard to determine if you're doing things, the way you're supposed to be doing them and that sort of thing. So definitely are. And this is a kind of a great jumping off point. But my name is Lauren Haley. I am Associate Director of Admissions at Widener University. I am the admissions counselor for students and parents from Carroll. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or anything later. I'm happy to work with you as you go through that. And I will, at the end, you'll see my email address in here. But I'm going to talk tonight about some other student credentials. So all of the other things that, not quite sure what to do with. It's a little ambiguous sometimes. So the way I like to look at it is, this is your autobiography. So this is what tells us, the things that you can't find on your transcript or your actual application itself. Shows us sort of, what rounds you out as a person. How do you stand out? It's similar to when you're looking at schools and you're wondering if that school, how does that school, what makes that school different from other schools that you're looking at? And how does it stand out? What's the identity of that school? So this is just sort of our way of looking at how, looking at you and your identity and how you might stand out. And then ultimately, really, it comes down to the fit. Are you a good fit for us, and are we a good fit for you? And that's really kind of the end goal of all this as you're going through the process. Are we a good fit? So first of all, there are activities. And there's a lot of activities, lots of different things. I know you might be going through your head already of like all the lists of things that you do, outside of the classroom. And there's sort of the breadth of activities and the depth. The depth speaks more to like the things that take up most of your time, versus the breadth might be something that, while you value it and you feel it's important, it might just happen once a year. It might just be like a walk that you did or something to, a fundraiser or something like that. Again, super important, but it's just more of the breadth of it. So, just and sort of itemizing the importance of things to you and your identity a little bit. Have you had any leadership opportunities in your clubs or organizations or sports? Maybe you're the captain of your team, and you want to make sure that you note those sorts of things. And it's not limited to school activities. There are plenty of activities that you do outside of school that you want to consider and note as well. So community service opportunities, some volunteer hours. Maybe you're interested in something like physical therapy and you volunteered at a clinic or something like that, or you did a shadow or something like that. And that certainly counts as an activity as well. Perhaps you're involved in your church or different religious organization. You've been involved in civic engagement. Maybe you did a march for a topic or something like that. That's definitely included. Maybe you work a lot and it prevents you from having the time to do more clubs and organizations through the school. So tell us about that. Tell us about how that rounds you out as a person too, because work is obviously an important part of you and your experience, and it does great things for you. And those are the types of things that we want to see. I know sometimes I'll speak with students that they'll say, well, I don't really have any activities because I need to help out my family by babysitting my siblings or something like that, to sort of help out my parents or my grandparents or whomever. And that's important too. I mean, we just really want to know about the things that you do and the times that you're not in class kind of thing and not studying for a test or something like that. So what rounds you out as a person, again, is kind of the theme of that. So the essay or the personal statement. So, like Jeremy mentioned, this is definitely something that I think is starting to, with the test optional environment, is definitely something that's taking a lot more prominence in the process. I know at Widener, we are now also test optional. So if you decide to not submit test scores, then we would just require that you submit an essay. So different things to think about with that. But again, I think it goes back to telling a story. Your essay should, I always think about, like, I like to read autobiographies because I like to learn about people. If you think about an autobiography of like a famous person, usually each chapter is sort of its own story. So break down one of your stories. Think about one of the stories from your autobiography, and tell me that story. It's great if I know a lot of times people will just kind of reiterate things that they've already told me about in their activities. I can read a list of activities as well. So, but and again, none of this is wrong. But it's just I want to learn more about you and read it as a story as you go through. So and you can, I know especially with the Common App, if you're doing the Common App, there's going to be prompts offered. Read over those and see, do one of these prompts like spark a memory for you? Does it something tells you, again, going back to that story. So I would recommend, if you're able to, sort of following that good old standard 5-paragraph essay type of format, because we don't want it too short, don't want it too long, want it just right. So, just remember that those of us that are reading these essays, sometimes we don't have a lot of time to read them. So we want to get a snapshot of you in not too long of a time. But we don't want to shortchange you either. So usually I would say it doesn't have to be a 5-paragraph essay, but just that's a good rule of thumb to start with as you're putting it together. And really, you want to be authentic, be you. So if you're a creative person, be creative in your essay. If you had a life event or something that sparked an interest in a specific major, tell us about that. I know a lot of times, especially with like something like nursing, students will say, I was in the hospital, or, grandparent was in the hospital, and I really, noticed the way that the nurses were taking care of them, and it really made a difference to me. So those are the types of things that that might be something that you're interested in. One interesting thought I had too was, sometimes students will connect with a family member through a sport. So maybe you're really big into soccer because that's the way when you were younger you connected with a grandparent, and that's why soccer means so much to you. Again, just kind of throwing out some different things, different ways to think about the essay. Is there a prized possession, a struggle you overcame, anything like that? So we want to know the real you, not what you think we want you to be, whatever that means, because we don't want you to be anything other than you. So please be you and tell us about it. As always, sometimes too, especially on the Common App, I think there's a separate prompt that you can explain any situations. So that's a good place to do that. So maybe there was something that happened throughout high school that, you wouldn't, you could tell that something is wrong, or not wrong, but different on your transcript. And maybe this gives you the chance to sort of explain that situation. Maybe you were out for a period of time with a medical issue or something like that. So that kind of gives you an opportunity there. So just a couple tips I wanted to share on the essay from my perspective. And I know this was sort of mentioned already, but use care when inserting a specific school name. I've definitely read essays from the Common App that tells me a student is really interested in another school, and I'm like, oh, that's nice. But so just kind of take note of things like that, and definitely proofread or ask someone else to proofread for you, because I do think that proper using proper punctuation and things like that does show that you really care about this application that you're submitting. And then finally, recommendations. There's a variety of different recommenders that you can choose from, different areas, different subjects. perhaps there's a teacher from a subject that relates to your major that you're interested in. So maybe you're interested in engineering, so you get your science or math teacher to write a recommendation. Maybe you did a job shadow or an internship, and so you perhaps got your supervisor from that job shadow to write a recommendation for you. And ask those that that know you best, and can really speak to your strengths and that sort of thing. And just a plug for your teachers and your counselors. Make sure you know the deadlines and that you give them plenty of time to to write your recommendation for you. So if you know that the deadline is next week, you probably should ask them before that, but definitely give them as much time as humanly possible, so that they can really, be true to you when they're writing that. And just one final thing I just wanted to mention. Be mindful of what each school requires. So like I said, maybe, with Widener, if you don't submit test scores, you definitely want to make sure you submit an essay. There could be schools out there that would prefer that you not submit information. So make sure you're mindful of that as well. And as always, with anything that you're doing as you're going through this process, all schools have admissions counselors. That's what we're here for. We live and breathe it every day. So please never hesitate to reach out to us if you have questions, or you're not sure which way to go, if you're supposed to zig or zag. And we're all different. All the schools are different. We all have different requirements and things like that. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Never hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions. There's a lovely picture of Widener's campus up here. If you do get a chance to visit, we do have some on-campus tours. On our website, you can sign up for anything there. But my information is also on the screen. So please reach out to me if you have any questions. But thank you. I'm going to get out of my chair.
Thanks,
Right.
Lauren.
I think I'm turning it over to Morgan, right?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Morgan. I am one of the undergraduate admissions counselors with University of the Sciences over in West Philadelphia. So what we already talked about kind of covered everything around the basics of what you need to actually apply. And the things that I'm going to talk about are the things that you're going to move forward with after you've gotten your decision. So after you've gotten an acceptance, hopefully multiple acceptances to the schools that you've been applying to, there's a couple of more steps you're going to want to think about as you start moving forward. So one of the first ones is probably going to be visiting the college if you haven't done so already, which I know is kind of a touchy subject right now. Except the only thing that's really nice though is that I've heard so far from everyone who's spoken that there are on-campus tours. So same with us with University of the Sciences, we've just begun hosting on-campus tours, which we haven't done since November. So we're really excited about that. And you're probably going to see other schools doing that too. However, because we are still in the middle of the pandemic, definitely be sure that you are keeping in mind your safety and what you're comfortable with. So especially because this is now the second time we're doing this event virtually, we're getting better at making sure that we know how to handle how you want to visit campus. So at least in my experience with my university at U Sciences, we do have virtual tours. A lot of schools are going to offer virtual tours of a walkthrough of campus. Some schools may have just virtual admissions presentations that are going to specifically walk you through campus, go over any of your questions. And then some schools are going to have in-person on-campus tours or all of the above. So definitely be looking into those specifically, because getting a feel for the campus, getting a feel for the community is a very equally important part of your decision, along with obviously the academics that you're looking for. So getting on campus, understanding that feel is definitely nice. And especially over the past year of being virtual, a lot of schools have had time to make sure that virtual tour does the job. However, something else I would recommend too, as we are still kind of in this semi-virtual experience, is to look up other ways to check out campus. So some really great resources are to check out YouTube videos. So I know that I'm really big in just watching vloggers. I just like people walking around doing their daily stuff, drinking coffee, colleges do that too. So actually at U Sciences, we have a couple of kids who specifically just have vlogs of them hanging out on campus, doing stuff on campus. Go ahead and give the colleges that you're looking at a Google search and see if you can find some information on YouTube, see if you can find some information on maybe a blog. So sometimes students are specifically working with the admissions office. Sometimes they're just doing it by themselves. So you never really know what you might find. So definitely recommend doing that. Next, another thing to keep in mind as you're moving forward, thinking about where you want to head to next, now that you have that acceptance in your hand, is the potential for an interview with the admissions office. So not every single admissions office is going to do an interview. Some of them will offer an interview, but it won't be mandatory. And then some of them will be mandatory. So that's something you're definitely going to want to keep in mind as you're looking at those next steps. So usually if the interview is mandatory, you're going to know that right away. So as soon as you're getting that acceptance, you may not even have your acceptance yet. It may be part of the actual admissions process. So definitely pay attention to the requirements that each school has. Something else to keep in mind though is that the interview may be an option for you that you don't have to take, but if you want to, it's there. So for some schools, if you're interested in having that face-to-face, either virtually or in person interaction with the counselor that you think would really help strengthen your relationship with that school, take the interview if you feel like that would be beneficial for you. And especially if you're looking at perhaps more advanced degrees. So for example, at University of the Sciences, we do offer some 6-year direct entry doctorate level coursework. So if you are interested in some of those more higher level type of programs, there's definitely going to be some options for you to do interviews. So you can start meeting with that doctorate level faculty, especially if it's direct entry. So you already have that seat available for you. They may want to meet you ahead of time. So that's something you'll want to look at. So check out online, talk to your counselors, talk to your admissions counselors as well for tips about interview tips, interview tricks, and all of that stuff. But then also keep in mind, don't freak out if there is no interview. So there's definitely going to be a lot of times where that isn't a part of the process at all. So don't worry about it if it's not part of your process, but if it is part of your process, definitely do some advanced homework moving forward before you actually get to the point of sitting in front of a counselor. Okay, and then finally, I wanted to talk about the net price calculator and then also just the overall of financial aid. So when you get your acceptance letter, the next thing you're going to expect is to see a financial aid award letter. And you're going to get one of these from all of your schools. So this is going to have more information about scholarships, perhaps grants, loans, any additional aid that'll usually be through your FAFSA application. So your FAFSA application is an application that you fill out usually in the beginning of the year. Usually that application opens in October. You fill that out and that kind of gives a stepping stone to the financial aid office to evaluate you for need-based aid. So then you get that need-based aid financial aid award letter along with other your information. So what's really important to look at that is that your scholarships, how long do they last? What is their worth? How do they compare specifically with the tuition that you're looking at? So my best advice when you get to this point in the process is to lay out all of your financial aid award letters and really do the math of exactly what the value of each award is compared to that school. So a really good example of this is if you're looking at private universities, for example, and then their tuition is on the higher end than perhaps the public university. Pay attention to the scholarship specifically that they're offering, because potentially you could be looking at two very similar financial aid awards, but they look drastically different just based off the net price, sticker price tuition. So if you have a $25,000 scholarship and then it lasts for all 4 years, $25,000 scholarship, that's pretty nice. But what is it being compared to? Is it going towards a $40,000 tuition? Is it going towards $25,000 tuition? So kind of really just seeing the value of that. Something else to keep in mind as well as you're looking at financial aid is annual tuition increases. So is that scholarship going to maintain its value as you continue through that time period? So if you are looking at a school, usually the average increase is about 3%, could be lower, could be nothing, but definitely make sure you're looking into that and ask your counselors as you look into those things too. So is that increase going to then devalue that scholarship? What's it going to look like by the time you get to that 4th year? So actually kind of looking at the entire length of an education. Usually when I'm working with students, the number one problem I always see is you always look just at freshman year. Look past just freshman year. Look at the financial aid you're going to be getting freshman, then think about, is this going to be carrying into sophomore, junior, senior year? What is that end sticker price going to look like for me at the end of my final year with my degree? So lots of stuff to kind of look at as you're laying out all of those things. So I know that was kind of a lot, but keep in mind, checking out the school, definitely see if you can get a feel for the environment by going on a campus visit, checking them out online, doing virtual visits. Also keep in mind the interview. Will you need to interview? Will you not need to interview? And what do you need to do to prepare for that? And then finally, financial aid, which is usually the thing your parents get the most excited about talking about. And we're always happy to talk about those things with you, either working with admissions office, your guidance counselors at your high school, or the financial aid office. And we're more than happy to help. But I think I am going to toss this off to my colleague Kevin over at Cabrini University.
All right, Morgan, thank you so much. Hey guys, what's going on? Pleasure to talk to you all tonight. Really excited about the opportunity to be here. This is great. I wish we were all together tonight, and I wish we could, do this in person with each other. But you know how this is right now. Here I am in my room, so we're gonna do this virtual for tonight. But I'm glad that we can still meet and discuss some of this stuff. This stuff is really important, guys, and it's that time of year when we want to start to think about some of these things, the admissions process, and where we're ultimately going to be going to school. So I'm really glad to be here with you guys. Again, my name is Kevin Cooley. I'm one of the assistant directors of undergraduate admissions at Cabrini University. So hopefully you guys have come by some time to Cabrini. If not, I'll speak a little bit more about visitation here at the end, but I want to talk to you guys about responsibility, really, and what responsibility means as a student, as a senior in high school, and how we can handle some of these responsibilities, right? We're going to always have responsibilities as we advance through ourselves, whether it be in high school, college, or career paths. We're always going to face responsibilities, and one of those things within those responsibilities are going to be deadlines, right? And you guys are familiar with deadlines. I mean, we've had deadlines for projects, homework assignments, so on and so forth from 4th grade up to now. And we're going to always have deadlines, whether it be, with the college admissions process and application process, or when you get a job one day and you have to submit, a project on time for your supervisor. We're always going to have these deadlines, and we want to make sure we know how to handle them properly. I think, earlier in our session here, someone mentioned early action, early decision, which a lot of schools have. And you guys want to know which schools offer those, deadlines, and what you need to do in order to have all of your information submitted in time so that those schools can make right decisions for you so that you are prepared to be able to be admitted. At Cabrini, we are rolling admissions, so we don't really necessarily look at students in that regard, but we do have deadlines nonetheless, and I think the most important one for us is our May 1st deadline of placing an enrollment deposit. So, when you start to think about these things, what can you do, right? We need to make sure that we're prepared. We want to make sure that we have all of our information in for our application on time, whether it be the transcript coming from your high school, your personal essay, maybe not this year, but SAT, ACT scores. We want to make sure that we have all these documents prepared and that they're ready to go so that we're not getting to crunch time on a deadline and we're starting to freak out here a little bit. We want to make sure that everything is in line and ready to go so that the stress is low and that you guys have everything you need done, and you kind of just, handle it from there. So that's a little bit about deadlines, I think, and that kind of falls into your responsibility as a student, right? Like I said before, we're going to have an increase of responsibilities as a student, and we're getting to be, college level students now. And, those responsibilities are going to increase. And, some of these things come with the maturities and the preparation of becoming college students. So we want to make sure that we're aware of those things. You're not just most of you anyway, aren't going to be applying to just one school. So just make sure that you're aware of the schools that you're applying to and how they do handle things in regards to the admissions process. It's definitely an important thing to know what school you're applying to and how they do handle things in regards to your application decisions. So, I have a point here that speaks about notifying colleges of your decision as well. I think this is an important thing, and we're kind of getting to that point here, halfway through March and getting into April. You're starting to really make your decision here, which is exciting. I'm really glad that you guys are, thinking about attending college and starting to think about, okay, where am I going to call home for the next 4 years? This is an exciting time. Your friends are going to be making their school decisions. You're going to be going on social media and seeing people post and putting in their bios, this school, that school, and it's really an exciting time, I think, for everybody. So, you want to make sure that you're being communicable and you're speaking with your admissions rep about, do you intend on coming there? Do you have really strong interest in being a student there one day? Have you showed demonstrated interest in the school? Like, I know that when we're, reviewing students, we always like to take a look at their demonstrated interest. Have they come to campus for a tour? Have they come for an event on campus? Have they spoke to me or have they spoke to anyone in my office about what we have here at Cabrini to be able to offer them? Those are things that we take into consideration, right? So we want to make sure when we're looking at a student and we maybe haven't heard from them in a couple weeks, we can say, oh, well, we had this conversation a couple weeks back, or they came for a campus tour and we had a really good conversation with them while they were here. And that kind of plays into their decision. And it lets us know that they're still interested in what's going on with our school. So I think it's also worth noting that, when we are applying to schools, we're applying to a couple schools, right? And maybe at this time of year, we're going to say no to maybe a few of those schools. And I think it's worth letting those schools know that we won't be attending as well, because I know that we do a lot of email marketing campaigns and they get sent out and text messages get sent out and you're bombarded with information and communications into your email. And we don't want to bother you really as much as we do want to reach you and talk to you. But I think it helps us to know that you are no longer interested and that we can maybe focus our efforts on another student. Or if you are interested, that we can, still try to reach you and make sure that you're getting all the information that you need. So take some time to think about that a little bit. Take some time to maybe just speak with a counselor and say, what do you need from me? Is there anything that I can do to sort of help you guys out as well? We're here to help you guys the best that we can. And we're always here, whether it be during the work hours or afterwards. We want to make sure that we're reachable and that we're able to communicate with you guys about whatever it is you need. So feel free to always reach us, no matter what time of day it is, at least for me anyway. And, we can try to help you out with that. I think Morgan did a really great job of breaking down financial aid for you guys, which is awesome because now I can kind of just piggyback off of what she said. So that's a huge help. But I think, to sort of tie into those deadlines, right, we want to think about FAFSA a little bit, right? Like, when can we apply for FAFSA? When did the application open up? When's the last opportunity for us to get the application in? It's financial aid, guys, is one of the most important driving purposes of why, we're choosing a school. Sometimes it can be even the very top priority in when you're choosing a school. And I know a lot of students come to me and say, hey, like, I really love Cabrini, but I need a little bit more additional aid to be able to make this work, right? And that all ties into your financial aid and how you're, approaching that. So when we talk about financial aid, she did a great job of mentioning FAFSA and making sure that you guys have that application in so that you do get your award letter. You want to have that award letter so that you can really compare it to other schools. I think my best advice really is to just take some time, lay out all those award letters and see exactly how much each school is offering you. Because like Morgan mentioned, you might be getting a higher award from one school, but tuition costs might be a little bit higher. And, if you do the math on that, you got to find out how much your actual balance would be, per semester or per year. It was a very good point. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Financial aid, guys, is really important. I think when you graduate, whether you're facing student loans or whether you have the opportunity to pay your school as you go, you have to weigh out these options and make sure you're aware of what you're taking on. It's really important, and we want to make sure that you guys are prepared to have a career one day where you can make this money back if you need to and pay off your loans. And we want to make sure that you're in a comfortable situation, really. When you come to Cabrini, I know that students always say to me, what steps do I need to do, whether it's a first-gen student or a student that has had 2 or 3 brothers or sisters that have gone to college. I always get the questions about financial aid. And I know that we have at Cabrini a appeals committee that actually meets on an individual basis with some of these students, and we can review them further and see if there's any more additional aid we can provide to them. I know I can speak on behalf of my school, and I'm sure some other schools do that as well. I think it's definitely worth knowing what options you have, and if there's any additional scholarships out there available for you guys. Try to get as many as you can. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to help you save some money. I think there's the sky's the limit in terms of what grants are available for you, as long as you can find them and apply to them, whether it be with your institute or outside of your institute. There's ways to find the additional aid, but just speak with your admissions counselor about those opportunities and see what they have to say, what options you have, and then you can really weigh things out. I definitely get a lot of questions from parents about that, obviously, because we're talking about finances, but it's tying back into the responsibility of being a student, right? And taking on some more responsibilities, and you're going to start to look at this aid and the finances and how we're going to pay for this stuff. So that's kind of what I have to say about that. Definitely reach out to your admissions counselor about what options you have, and be excited about these responsibilities. This is a new chapter for all of you guys. You guys are all going to do wonderful. It's really exciting. Don't be too overwhelmed, and just know that we're all on your side from here on out. So let me know if you guys have any questions about any of the things that I mentioned. Definitely stop by Cabrini sometime if you guys are in the area and want to take a campus tour. We're definitely offering tours right now on campus. We do them every day. So come on by, say hi to one of us, take a tour with one of our student ambassadors, and we can talk a little bit more about this stuff. So that's kind of what I had. I'm going to pass it over to Jasmine now. But thank you, guys.
Thanks, Kevin. And one moment, I'll just share screen for a moment. I have a few slides to take you guys through just a few final points, and a few of the colleagues on the call alluded today to your career. And that goes back to, what you want to study and what's next for you. And when thinking about what do you want to study, kind of that big question comes into your mind. What do I want to do for the rest of my life? Or what do I want to be when I grow up? Well, that's something big that you have to think about. And I represent Delaware County Community College as an admissions officer. And at the community college, we do have a lot of different programs that you may not find at some of the different 4 years or larger institutions. But that's great because it does open up that ability for what students have interest in and where you can find essentially where your passion might meet your paycheck. So there's different types of degrees that you can obtain. There's options for technical degrees. So if you are someone that may be interested in getting your hands dirty and working with automotive, maybe electrical or carpentry, those are definitely options for earning certificates or degrees. You can also look into different career degrees. Maybe you're someone that's interested in obtaining that 2-year associates to allow you to go right into the workforce and maybe a field like medical assistant or medical billing and coding, or even accounting. There's options for those career degrees. Or the types of degrees that a lot of students may be familiar with, especially when utilizing a community college, is a transfer degree. And that's where students are earning those college level credits that are essentially those general education requirements, or those 100 and 200 level classes that are highly transferable that they can take out of the community college and transition to another institution and continue their education. And there's a lot of different ways that students can do that. And the earliest way that student can do that is through dual enrollment programs. So you'll find that your area community college and maybe even some four-year institutions do dual enrollment programs, which are high school enrichment that allows for the high school students to start earning college credit at Delaware County specifically as early as their sophomore year. So you can get a jump start and actually earning those college level courses. And at a lot of institutions, you do it at an even more affordable rate as a dual enrollment student. So you can get started early. Typically with dual enrollment programs, you do have to place college level. So whether that be through taking a placement test or demonstrating through SATs or some other different test optional opportunities like we talked about on the call, typically dual enrollment students are at least college level as far as placement. But the nice thing is about dual enrollment is there's flexible programs that fit your schedule. So for some dual enrollment students, it's worked right within their high school schedule. And for some students, it's worked around their high school schedule. So depending on your how your schedule is currently set up, depending on how your guidance counselor in your particular school works, definitely I would say if you're interested in getting a jump start and earning some education and some college level credits early, it's an opportunity for students to not only get a jump start and get an idea of what college feels like, maybe what major do I want to go, the education route or the business route, but the students also have that opportunity to dip their toe into the college field, and you'll actually be in college level classes with other college students. So you're getting that idea of it. And the benefit is, on the long run, we find that students either graduate with that 4-year degree early, or they graduate at the same time as their peers, but sometimes they can have dual degrees, so graduating with multiple degrees at one time. So that's an awesome opportunity if students get an early jump start by utilizing programs like dual enrollment. You'll also find that some institutions have non-credit programs like SAT Prep and other life skills that you can utilize that will essentially benefit you and brush up some skills as you're moving through some of these different professional experiences. And when thinking about what you want to study and that big question about what you want to be for the rest of your life and where do you want to transfer to and how does that all work, that does come with a lot of questions. So you will find at your different institutions, there are different resources for you to get help. So wondering how you get help, I would definitely encourage any of you who may not be sure, reach out to institutions and see if they offer some sort of career counseling, or if you are undecided or maybe choosing or leaning towards a liberal arts major, working with that institution to see if they have some sort of, like I mentioned, ways to find some different professions that align with the things that you are passionate about so that you can be truly happy in whatever career path that you choose. And like I mentioned, you can start with the community college. If you are interested in earning a bachelor's degree, you can still start with us by earning some of those early level credits. So whether you're interested in one of our transfer programs like engineering or business, education, psychology, sociology, the list goes on as far as different transferable options. But the important piece is about working with our transfer advisors and establishing a transfer plan. Every institution on this call has very different requirements about what types of credits they accept, when they accept credits from students, what classes translate into what class when you transfer it out. So it's important that you work with transfer advisors when you're at the community college level obtaining credits, or if you're at any institution and plan on transferring credits. It's important to work with both sides of the institution to ensure that you're taking the right classes and that you're spending your money wisely, because those classes will then transfer out. So essentially, students can utilize the community college as a bridge to obtain those transfer credits and obtain that bachelor's degree in the long run. So they have those options and those opportunities to get a jump start. So the nice thing is, the earlier that you know where you want to transfer to or where you want to obtain that bachelor's degree from, it's important to communicate that to the transfer advising office. And like the slide mentions, they will build that transfer plan with you so that you know in each semester which classes that you should be taking, what those classes will translate out to, and when your plan is to transfer out of the institution. And if anything ever changes in your plan, it's extremely important for you to notify our transfer advisors, because that may change your transfer plan a little bit. Like I mentioned, every institution's requirements are different. So if at one point you're interested in transferring to Penn State, and then you say, I changed my mind, maybe I'm thinking about going to St. Joe's now. Well, you need to let our transfer advisors know, because St. Joe's requirements may be very different from Penn State's requirements. So it's a really good opportunity to get a jump start in saving some money by looking at a community college, and maybe staying local by looking at a community college. But it's also a great opportunity to continue your education with some of the other great four-year institutions through partnerships and transfer agreements. So that's my piece. I'll actually pass it back to the lovely host with Carroll to continue along with this call.
All right. Thank you, Jasmine.
Problem.
We originally were going to have Mr. Lynham, who was one of our other guidance counselors with us. He unfortunately had an emergency, so he cannot be with us. So he was going to talk a little bit about NCAA requirements. He is our go-to guy for anything NCAA related. So just if we have any athletes out there, parents of athletes, he is our person to contact, so you know exactly what you want to do. And so for anyone who is interested in playing at the collegiate level at a D1 or D2 school, you know you need to create an NCAA account. So you want to work with Mr. Lynham in doing that. He will take you step by step with that. And I know if he were here tonight, he would also remind you to please keep your grades up, that you want to be a student athlete, which is something that, you know, all the colleges tend to really look at, and they gravitate towards those student athletes. I want to thank our panelists, all our panelists, for all the wonderful information that they have given us. It is a lot that for us to consume and to think about. I know we have a few questions. So Mrs. Nardelli, if you could, and I jotted down a few as well, but let's start with questions from our parents and our students.
Sure. The first one, can you add all 3 types of applications to a school's application portal?
I'll tackle this one since it was my section. But typically parents, for parents, students, just so you know, typically one application is just fine.
Okay. Next question. How do parents make sense of the wildly different tuitions from school to school?
I could take that one just because, sorry, Kevin, I stepped all over your toes with financial aid. But I was just thinking too, because I spent, I think, a collective 5 hours today doing tuition comparison sheets for exactly that reason. So not to tell that every single school does this, every single school does not do this, but at least specifically with U Sciences, what we offer is that if you are really confused about, especially like what I said, keeping track of the tuition sequences of every single school and what does my scholarship look like at this school? How does it compare to another school? Something that we do here at U Sciences is I will actually do a tuition comparison for you. So you can send me your information about your awards. So sending me your award letters you got from other schools, and I will straight up, completely transparent, do a comparison for you and say, this is what it looks like at U Sciences compared to what you're being offered at this other university. Sometimes U Sciences doesn't come out on top, and you know that happens, and I'm totally honest with you guys about that, because I'm not going to try, like, our job is not to force you into doing one specific thing. If this is not the right place for you, I'm totally okay with having that conversation with you. Like, whatever is totally up to you financially. But if you're really confused, if you're really overwhelmed, seek out extra help from the colleges. You never know if we might be able to do something like that for you. Just straight up do a comparison sheet. And then also make sure that you're creating that relationship with us. Because like I said, today I just spent literally hours working with a student I've been working with since they were a sophomore in high school. So she trusts me to be pretty transparent with her about what we're talking about with tuition. So if you get really overwhelmed, don't hesitate to reach out to maybe your number one school. That's your top school. Be like, hey, you're my top school, but I have this over here. Can you explain to me how maybe that works compared to your school? And then we can talk you through that. So just kind of opening up that conversation. Don't be afraid to ask the question and see if we can help. We do this for a living. So if this is confusing for you, if it's the first time you've ever seen this before, don't be afraid to ask. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I also think it's important for people to realize that you're comparing apples and oranges too, right? Like it almost reminds me, and I have some friends who are in the market to buy homes, and it reminds me of if somebody was to compare a $300,000 house in Havertown to a $300,000 house in Springfield and try to make a decision just off of that. You can't. There's so many different things that would go into your decision outside of just the sticker price of that property, right? And so the same thing happens with colleges and universities. We can't spend your money for you, nor would I try to, right? But there are some students who maybe Penn State's affordability is on a sticker price better than what they would be looking at another university, but the overall experience or what they feel they would be getting out of that other institution makes that gap worth it, right? And so what you have to ultimately decide is what is feasible for you and your family, and then ultimately which school is going to give you the best bang for your buck, right? Like, if I have a family of 5, I'm not going to buy a coupe and try to make that a minivan, right? And so you need to make sure that the institution that you're going to wind up on and wind up attending has every piece that you need, and that's going to look different from place to place outside of just a dollars and cents conversation. So it's important to keep that in mind.
Okay. Do we need to create a FSA ID account? And if so, would that be student and parent or just student?
I don't mind taking that one. So both the parent and the student would need to create a FSA ID account. So they would need their individual social security numbers to set up that profile, because they would both need it to sign the FAFSA at the end. If they're unable to create that account, there are some options to print the signature page of the form, but typically the easiest way would be for them to set up the FSA ID account if they have social security numbers.
Okay. And do you need to apply for financial aid each college year? Like, for example, the grants and loans?
Great question. Yes, the FAFSA would open October 1st every single year, and you would need to complete a new FAFSA each year. So if you're a senior and you're thinking about maybe starting early in that summer, you've got 2 FAFSA applications that are currently out there. But yeah, each year over year, you would complete the FAFSA application. Great question.
Okay, and one last question. Who should we refer to for Service Academy and ROTC related questions?
I can just mention that, so Widener often hosts a Service Academies and ROTC program for like the general area. You don't have to be interested in Widener or anything like that. It's obviously for if you're interested in the Service Academies and different ROTC programs. It's just hosted at Widener. I actually just got the date today. It's going to be on May 4th at 7 p.m. If you go to Widener's website, under the events section, you'll see it listed on there and you can register.
And one last question. Do colleges look more at experience or the curriculum during the application process?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that a little bit. I think every school's a little bit different, right? And it depends what each school is looking for on the application. I really love to see experience as well as curriculum, but when you mentioned here, I'm reading your question, just speaking a little bit about AP classes. I mean, that's impressive to me, and I'm sure it's impressive to all the counselors here as well. I want to see what the student is interested in studying for sure, and what experiences they have participated in that might attribute towards that major. Are they involved in clubs and organizations? Are they in student government? Stuff like that. I always look for those first before I even look at the curriculum and what kind of classes they've taken, to be honest with you. To be honest, really, I look at essay first to read, how they write and what they've written about. And then I kind of look at what kind of things they're participating in to sort of give me an idea of what kind of a student it is, and what are they doing outside of the classroom. It's really always impressive to see what kind of curriculum they are a part of and what classes they're taking. Are they challenging themselves, or are they maybe taking on level but doing really well? Is there something that maybe they had a class that maybe they dropped a little bit in performance? We can have a conversation about why that grade might have dropped, and if you're having some sort of a life experience that is affecting those classes. It's hard for me to speak on behalf of everyone here, I think, but I know, the way that's sort of how I approach an application application review. And I think it's definitely good to be involved. It's never a bad thing, I don't think. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I love this question too. And I agree with everything Kevin said. And, I think sometimes we can't forget as families and students the importance of an experience for us personally and not just how it appears to a college, right? Because I get a lot of questions from students. Well, how does a college look at this? Or how would a college think about that? But don't forget the value of these experience for your own person outside of how we look at things. Because like we only matter now, right? Like after you're admitted and you enroll, you're not going to be doing things for us anymore. Like, well, how would the admissions office look like this now that I'm in my third year at Widener, right? Like you're not going to process that. So one of the things I like about this question, it sounds like your son or daughter is really thinking about trying out some of the vocations, right? Maybe cosmetology, maybe automotive. And the thing I like about that as they're weighing their college options along with that is if you experience it, and you say, you know what, it really is cosmetology or it really is automotive, then you're not going to waste your time applying to a bunch of four-year schools. But you may say, you know what, I do love automotive. I do love cosmetology, but I still really want to give this college thing a shot. But you've tested it out, right? So now you're making an informed decision because you tried that out in high school, right? And so that's what I love. If you're thinking about balancing the vocation with your college preparedness, that's great. And ultimately what a lot of us really care about at the end of the day when we look at an application, we just want to see what matters to you. Right. Well, what are you excited about? What are you leaning towards? What are you aiming towards? There's no rubric. We're not saying, well, hey, this kid is great. They met me at the college visit when they came to our school and did the tour. Their school counselor says a lot of wonderful things about them. But you know what? They took that automotive vocational in their senior. That's not how it works. We're saying, okay, look at all these different experiences that this student brings. We try to build a well-rounded class of individuals across all the incoming students. We're not just looking at for well-rounded students, we're looking in a well-rounded class. So I get excited if a student's transcript looks a little bit different because they're going to bring different experiences into my university that year.
Okay, how about the pros and cons of early decision or early action?
One of the big pros is obviously if you're like me, like you can't sit still when you're waiting for some news, and you're already like, I'm not getting in. This is it. It's over. Life's over. But so one of the biggest positives is definitely getting to know the decision early on. I will say that one of the cons could also be you have to get your materials ready much sooner. Another pro definitely is usually students who are applying early decision only have one application to fill out. But with that being the case, then you might not be able to compare with other financial aid offers from other universities. Also, with early action, similar to rolling admission, you have until May to make that decision. So you have kind of a couple different schools to choose from if you're doing that early action with or rolling admission with other universities. But you might lose a semester worth of grades or activities that you're applying with as well. And lastly, I think that usually with early action, it's a smaller applicant pool. But on the flip side, they might be stronger students too in that smaller applicant pool.
So Fung, with that being said, would there be an advantage then to doing rolling as opposed to early action?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. With rolling admission, it's essentially you get to know earlier, and there's no real binding agreement contract component to it like early decision. So yeah, there are quite a few positives with rolling admission.
Okay. Do families submit the FAFSA application before a student knows which colleges they are interested in applying to? And is the FAFSA application school specific?
It helps. if you know what schools you're going to be applying to. But the nice thing is you can always add schools to the FAFSA later, right? So if you add some schools to your list that you want to have evaluate you for financial aid and considerations, you can definitely add that information later. It's not like once, you initially fill it out, if they're not on there, they don't get it. It's not how it works. It's kind of a living document in that way. You can always add schools later or adjust your order, but it always does help if you know where you're applying ahead of time. That way you don't have to keep going in and out.
Okay. And how much more appealing to a college is being a diocesan scholar, if at all?
I would say it's definitely appealing. Kind of like nice little anythings are really great just to have on the application. So like someone mentioned before, AP credits, honors level courses, diocesan scholar. It's just something that we can see right away on a piece of paper that is like, oh, so this student stands out either academically, and then especially because a lot of us work specifically with our territories, we know what that means. So that scholarship isn't just a, oh, well, what is that? I need to go look into it. A lot of the local schools like ourselves, we're aware of what that scholarship is. So yeah, I would definitely say that's a benefit.
And that was all the questions. That was all of them.
So I had a question for you guys because we had a lot of questions this year. The diocese uses a 6.0 GPA, and so that is what we send you. What do you do with that GPA that we send you?
Penn State recalculates it. It comes in on that self-reported academic record, and we recalculate it in a context that we can understand, right? Because you're not the only school or order of schools that does things differently, right? You're always going to have a school that has a 6.0. Lower Merion School District has a 5.0 GPA. There's a charter school somewhere that has smiley faces and frowns as their grading scale, right? Like we always have to do this with every school, not just yours, but with every, just to build a little bit of context. But the nice thing is, your A's are going to still be A's, right? Like that doesn't get calculated out. When you fill out that self-reported academic record for us, we still see that as an A. It's just not going to look like a 6.0 like it would on your transcript.
And in that recalculation, do you tend to just pull out the core academic classes?
Yeah, so we pull out what they jokingly call the core four, right? So your math, your English, your science, your history. We also take out the arts and the humanities as well, so we add those to our evaluation. But with a school like Carroll or a Bishop Shanahan, for instance, we do not calculate your religion courses. We don't calculate your gym courses, but pretty much everything else will go into that evaluation.
So a number of you mentioned with financial aid, talking to you in case you a family is looking to receive more. Are you the first step to that? Do they reach out to the admissions office to try and, I'll use the term wheel and deal, for more financial aid, or do they go right to the financial aid office?
I mean, it really depends specifically on the school. Usually what I always say to students, especially as you get to that point of financial aid, is that if I don't know the answer, I know who does. So I'm your best first stop. I may be the one who can actually answer your question. There's definitely, at least with U Sciences, we are trained to be able to answer some questions very specifically in financial aid. But if there's anything that I can't answer, I can get you in contact with the financial aid office. So in that regard, I would say your best bet is to reach out to admissions first. And if we aren't your contact, we'll get you in contact with who you need to go to. So we're a really good first stop. Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you.
And just to piggyback off that, the FAFSA does currently ask for tax information from the prior year. So in certain circumstances, your current family life does not reflect what the taxes are reflecting. So if, for example, your family was making a lot more in the prior year than what they're currently making, in most cases, and especially at Delaware County Community College, and that you want to maybe reach out directly to the financial aid office, let them know that you're having a special circumstance. And then they may be able to do those adjustments on the back end to reflect your FAFSA information.
I don't think any of our schools here tonight require the CSS. Is that correct? Because I know that is a different, okay, that is a different financial form that some schools do require. It's a little more in depth than the FAFSA. But I know none of you do. Okay, thank you. And Jasmine, I had a particular question for you. You were talking about the transfer programs, and I know Delaware County has a really good nursing program. It's got a great reputation. Do students who go through your nursing program, are they successful in transferring to a four-year school to get, the
Bachelor's in nursing.
the bachelor's
That's
in
a
nursing?
great
Yeah.
question. Yeah. So at the community college, we offer an associate's degree in nursing that students can obtain. And the nice thing about that is after that 2-year program, they can sit for the NCLEX and become an RN if they successfully pass that test. But if they are interested in continuing with that associate's degree to earn the BSN, Bachelor's in Nursing, they do have the option to transfer those credits out. Now, as you may or may not know, nursing programs tend to be a beast at a lot of different institutions, and it's extremely tough to get in. It's extremely competitive for nursing programs, including the nursing program at Delaware County Community College. We even have a formal admission process for that too. So I would say for if you are interested in transferring a nursing degree, your best bet would be to look into some established partnerships, like what Delaware County Community College. We have an established partnership with Westchester University that bridges students to go right from their associate's degree to earning their BSN with that institution. If there's another institution that you're interested in getting a nursing degree from, great. The best bet is to communicate that as early as possible to our transfer advising office. In our minds, we may think, we're going to do 2 years with Delaware County and then go get my nursing degree from Widener University, get my bachelor's of nursing, and it'll just be smooth right in there. But everybody's process is very different, like I mentioned. So you might find that if you're interested in nursing at another institution, maybe that institution doesn't even accept transfer students into their nursing program. Or maybe you have to start there, and maybe you can only obtain 15 credits before you can go there. So I say all that to say it is very possible to transfer in nursing, but it is even more specific than any other program. I would say maybe it's up there with engineering. So the earlier you communicate where you want to transfer those nursing credits to or obtaining to get a bachelor's degree in nursing and starting with community, the earlier you communicate that, the more on track your plan will be.
Thank you so much. We have so many students at Carroll interested in nursing. So I wanted to ask that specifically, as well as engineering. You kind of mentioned two of our top majors. Again, thank you all so much this evening. You have given us so much information and a wonderful head start for our juniors and any sophomores who might be with us tonight. So plenty to think about and so much to digest. So thank you all so much. Hopefully you'll be hearing from our students and they'll be signing up for tours, sending those applications in. But thank you again, and we wish everybody a really good night and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.